Now, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Agatha Christie. She was considered one of the great lyricists of the 20th century, known for her crime drama novels, often including murder mystery, which influenced a lot of the television shows and movies that we see today. She is most widely known for her popular book, A Murder on the Orient Express. But did you know she had a mystery of her own in which she disappeared for 11 days? And it is considered one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. And I want to walk you through these events because I have proposed a new theory as to what may have happened to Agatha Christie. Now, it was 1926 on December 3rd at 9:30 at night. She was at her home in Berkshire, where she went upstairs to kiss her daughter goodnight, and then went back downstairs and proceeded to her vehicle, in which she left her house not to be seen for another 11 days on December 14th. Now, immediately the next day, the police began investigating a missing persons case. Now, her car was found abandoned in the Newlands corner of Gulliford, and there was no damage found to her car, no signs of a crash, so they believed that she may still be alive and well. And this began a giant search for this huge celebrity, in which they launched 1,000 police officers to search for her. There were several well-known people and prominent people that were searching for her. Several mediums were brought in because they thought perhaps they could help locate her. And the search went on for 11 days until on the 14th day, she was actually found at a hotel. And she was recognized by someone who then relayed this information to her husband, who came and got her. And when she was interviewed by the police, she had no recollection of what happened in the past 11 days. Now, many speculated that she had suffered from amnesia, but after a health evaluation, it was found that she was in good health. Now, it's interesting because many theories have popped up about what has actually happened to Agatha Christie. And, you know, the first one being that she was simply trying to create a ruse, a publicity stunt to draw up attention for her new book that was coming out. Now, that to me doesn't make sense because she was very popular. She was very successful. Everybody knew of her during this time. So I don't think she would need to generate buzz or attention to her novel because she was such a great author that she basically, her work sold itself. So I don't think that is the situation. It was also speculated that maybe she just wanted to have a mystery adventure of her own. But I don't think that's the case either because I don't know why she would vanish for 11 days and leave her family and leave everybody wondering what happened to her. Another theory is that perhaps this was an attempt to catch her husband, who she believed had a mistress and was having an affair, and that this was going to bring it out in the spotlight. But I don't think she would want that kind of attention associated with her name, being that she was an author. That would be bad PR for her. And I don't think she would want that to come out in the open. Other people have speculated that perhaps this was an attempted kidnapping, or perhaps a murder attempt, and she had escaped and suffered amnesia by hitting her head. But there was no evidence of a head injury of any kind. the most plausible theory that has come forward is that potentially she was under a lot of stress or duress, and this caused her to go into a manic state of confusion and basically kind of forgot what happened in the past 11 days, which could be possible. And then, there's another theory that perhaps she was in a car accident and sustained a concussion and suffered from amnesia, and this is how she ended up in a random place at a hotel. And so it's very odd, and every time you come up with a theory, you can always easily disprove that theory because there's so many different elements to the story. And one of the things that makes the story even stranger is the fact that when they found her at the hotel, she had checked in under the name of her possible husband's mistress. So it seems like maybe there was some sort of attempt to make light of the fact that her husband was having an affair or something like that. But it's just very odd, these series of events. And I've kind of tracked this out on a map. And basically, her home in Berkshire is east of London, okay? She travels, west of London. She travels southeast, okay, where her car is found about an hour away. And then she is found 4 hours north of that spot 11 days later, up in the northern UK. So it's kind of weird that, a lot of people said that she was heading to London, but it's kind of odd because she's headed in the opposite direction, and it's almost like she wasn't trying to go to the place she ended up at, essentially, because she is headed southeast originally, and this is where the car is found, which is kind of weird because it throws people off, because you think if she was going to this hotel initially and, for instance, crashed along the way, then why was she headed in the opposite direction? Now, there's a lot of natural theories, okay, and it seems like we can't prove these natural theories. So maybe it's time we look out at the supernatural realm, and perhaps this is something supernatural. I think it's very possible that Agatha Christie may have been abducted by extraterrestrials. And the reason I say this is because often when you look at a lot of cases of alien abduction, these abductees report missing time, where they have these periods of time they cannot recount or recall for. And it's almost as if they suffered periods of amnesia, okay? Another thing that's seen commonly with abductees is that they often end up in a different place than they originally were, and they have no recollection of how they got there or why they're there, or sometimes they end up in places that they would never usually be, or it would be impossible because they were driving north and then they end up somewhere that's south of where they were driving. So it just seems to me like this fits in a lot with a lot of the cases of alien abduction. Think of Betty and Barney Hill, right? They're driving on New Hampshire on this interstate, and they get this feeling that something tells them to turn off the road. They're abducted, and then they're returned, and when they come back to Earth and they've returned, they find themselves driving again, but in the opposite direction, And this is common with a lot of abductees, that they experience missing time, and they often end up in places and they don't know how they got there, and they can't piece together the events that led to them going to this place, which sounds very similar to Agatha Christie. So I think that what happened is that I think, and this is my theory personally, I think that she left her home that night and she was going to travel potentially to this hotel. And I think that she knew her husband was having an affair with this mistress, and her plan was to go to this hotel, check in under the mistress's name, and she probably had insider advice that her husband was going to meet the mistress at this hotel. And so she used the mistress's name so that when her husband would come there to the hotel and ask for the mistress, right, they would send him up to the room that was Agatha Christie's. She would catch him in the action. Bada bing, bada boom, right? But I think when she left her house that night in Berkshire, that somewhere along the way, she was abducted by extraterrestrials and then returned and thought, because she had experienced missing time, that only maybe a short period of time had passed, and she thought that it was still that same night, and she didn't realize she had been missing for 11 days, and ended up going to this hotel and waiting for her husband, where she was initially found by her husband being there, and that it was reported that she was missing and everybody was looking for her. And so this is my initial belief, that this is what happened to Agatha Christie on those 11 days, that she was abducted by extraterrestrials and then returned and then found by her husband. And a lot of people say, you know, why wouldn't she have come forward with any of this, you know, and said anything about, you know, that she thought she was taken up to space or anything similar to that? And I think you have to think about it, okay? Back then, anything could get you locked up in a insane asylum. So you didn't want to go around saying, "Hey, I was taken up to space by these green men," or something like that, you know, because that would end up bad for you. Also, I think that she knew that there was a lot of speculation about what happened, and a lot of noise going on that this could be potentially some sort of conspiracy or PR stunt or something like that. And if she goes and says, you know, "Hey, I was taken up to space by these green men," that adds more to people thinking, okay, this is a big ruse and she's messing with us. So I think that's why she never wanted to talk about that, because she felt that that would affect her integrity as an author and a lyricist, and she didn't want that to affect her career. And what's interesting is, you see, after this disappearance, she goes on and writes some of her best work. She goes on and writes Murder at the Orient Express. So she continues after this disappearance and has this very successful career. And you see a whole kind of change in the work she puts forth. It's almost as if she's been given a bunch of new ideas, and like perhaps she had been given some sort of information or knowledge that allowed her to come up with some of these novels that we read today. And I think it's interesting to note that, you know, not a lot of people have looked into the supernatural as an explanation for what happened to Agatha Christie. But thank you guys for listening. I'm Parahan. Peace out.